The Russian occupation of Kherson was a dark and difficult time for the residents of this southern port city. For over 8 months, they had to endure the brutality, oppression and humiliation of the invaders, who seized their homes, businesses, and public institutions. They also had to cope with the economic and social challenges caused by the occupation and the betrayal of some of their fellow citizens. The occupation disrupted the normal functioning of the city and its infrastructure. Many public services were cut off or reduced, such as water, electricity, gas, and internet. The prices of food and other basic goods skyrocketed, while the availability and quality of them declined. The Russian troops imposed a curfew and restricted the movement of people and vehicles. They also confiscated weapons, vehicles, radios, and other equipment from the residents. The occupation also had a devastating impact on the livelihoods and well-being of the people. Many businesses were closed or looted by the Russians or their collaborators. Many workers lost their jobs or had to work for low wages and under harsh conditions. Many farmers lost their crops or livestock or had to sell them at low prices to the occupiers. Many students and teachers had to stop their education or switch to Russian-language schools. Many doctors and nurses had to leave their hospitals or clinics or work with limited resources and under constant threat. The occupation also threatened the identity and dignity of the people. The Russians tried to erase the Ukrainian culture and history from the city. They removed Ukrainian flags, symbols, and signs and replaced them with Russian ones. They banned Ukrainian books, media, and events and promoted Russian propaganda. They forced people to speak Russian and obtain Russian passports. They persecuted anyone who resisted or expressed loyalty to Ukraine. The occupation also divided the society and sowed mistrust among the people. Some residents collaborated with the Russians, either out of fear, greed, or ideological affinity. They reported on their neighbors, friends, or relatives who were involved in resistance activities or supported Ukraine. They helped the Russians in collecting taxes, enforcing laws, or recruiting fighters. They benefited from privileges, protection, or rewards from the occupiers. But not all Kherson residents succumbed to the occupation. Many of them resisted in various ways, risking their lives and freedom for their homeland. Some of them joined underground resistance groups that coordinated with Ukrainian special forces and provided them with valuable information, such as locations of Russian troops, vehicles, and ammunition stocks. Some of them carried out sabotage operations against Russian targets, such as officials, bases, or infrastructure. Some of them smuggled weapons, food, or medicine into or out of the city. Some of them organized protests, strikes, or boycotts against the occupiers. The resistance movement in Kherson was stealthy but effective. It undermined the Russian control over the city and boosted the morale of the people. It also paved the way for the liberation of Kherson by Ukrainian forces in November 2023, after a fierce battle that lasted for several days. The liberation of Kherson was a joyous occasion for most residents, who welcomed their liberators with cheers, hugs, and flowers. They celebrated their freedom and expressed their gratitude to Ukraine and its allies. They also mourned their losses and honored their heroes who sacrificed themselves for their city. But the liberation also brought new challenges for Kherson residents. They had to rebuild their city and restore their normal lives after months of devastation and disruption. They had to heal their wounds and trauma after experiencing violence and suffering. They had to reconcile their differences and rebuild trust after witnessing betrayal and collaboration. Kherson residents have shown remarkable resilience and courage in recovering from the Russian occupation and its aftermath. They have received support from Ukraine's government, civil society, and international partners in addressing their needs and challenges. They have also demonstrated solidarity and compassion in helping each other and sharing their resources. Kherson residents have not forgotten their ordeal under Russian occupation, nor have they forgiven those who betrayed them. But they have also not given up on their hope for a better future for themselves, their city, and their country. How Kherson residents rebuilt their community and strengthened their ties with the rest of Ukraine and the international community. Kherson Oblast, a southern region of Ukraine bordering Crimea and the Black Sea, was one of the hardest hit areas by the Russian invasion of 2022. For over 8 months, most of the oblast was under brutal Russian occupation, which ended only after a fierce counteroffensive by Ukrainian forces in November. During the occupation, many residents suffered from human rights violations, economic hardship, and psychological trauma. Some were accused of collaborating with the enemy, while others resisted and fought back. But despite the horrors of war, Kherson residents did not give up hope. They rebuilt their community and strengthened their ties with the rest of Ukraine and the international community. One of the ways Kherson residents rebuilt their community was by restoring their cultural heritage and identity. During the occupation, Russian forces tried to erase Ukrainian symbols and history from public spaces. They removed Ukrainian flags, renamed streets and buildings, and banned Ukrainian language and media. They also destroyed or looted many historical and religious monuments, such as the Kherson Fortress, the street, Catherine's Cathedral, and the monument to Taras Shevchenko. After the liberation, Kherson residents reclaimed their public spaces and restored their cultural landmarks. They raised Ukrainian flags, restored Ukrainian names, and celebrated Ukrainian holidays. They also repaired or rebuilt their damaged monuments, with the help of volunteers and donations from other regions and countries. Another way Kherson residents rebuilt their community was by supporting each other and helping those in need. During the occupation, many people lost their homes, jobs, or loved ones. Some were injured or traumatized by violence or torture. Some were displaced or separated from their families. After the liberation, Kherson residents organized various initiatives to provide humanitarian aid and social services to those affected by the war. They collected food, clothing, medicine, and other essentials for distribution. They also offered psychological counseling, legal assistance, medical care, and education to those who needed them. They also helped reunite families and find missing persons. A third way Kherson residents rebuilt their community was by strengthening their ties with the rest of Ukraine and the international community. During the occupation, Kherson Oblast was isolated from the rest of the country and cut off from external support. Russian forces blocked roads, railways, airports, and ports, preventing any movement of people or goods. They also jammed or hacked communication networks, making it difficult for Kherson residents to contact anyone outside the oblast. After the liberation, Kherson residents reconnected with their fellow Ukrainians and expressed their solidarity and gratitude for their support. They also welcomed international observers, journalists, diplomats, and humanitarian workers who came to monitor the situation and provide assistance. They also participated in various cultural exchanges, educational programs, and economic projects with other countries. Kherson Oblast has endured a lot of suffering and destruction during the Russian occupation. But it has also shown a lot of resilience and courage in rebuilding its community. Kherson residents have proven that they are proud Ukrainians who value their culture, history, and identity. They have also shown that they are willing to help each other and cooperate with others for a better future. Kherson Oblast is an example of how a region can overcome adversity and emerge stronger than before.